All right, let's talk about Shedeur Sanders, who obviously he fell in the draft, and I already made a film study about him as a player. I kind of talked about his strengths and his weaknesses, but now that we know that the NFL just did not view him as a great prospect, say what you want about the interviews and all that stuff, if he was a great prospect, he would have gone way earlier than round 5. I wanted to go back and watch the film and see why exactly did he fall, and I do think there are a lot of things on tape, kind of now, knowing what the NFL knows, going back and watching it, I can kind of see why. I also still think there are some positives, so let's talk about all of it. So first, the play you see on your screen, so it was kind of I feel like a war that broke out for chronically online people like myself about his throwing with anticipation. So this play, for example, you see the one-on-one matchup going over the middle, that's where he's going to look. Watch how when this play begins, a lot of what people talked about with Sanders is, at the beginning of this process, was he throws with anticipation really well. However, when people kind of dived into the films, when NFL people dived into the film, there was a lot of pushback on that. And I have to say, I agree with the pushback. I don't think he does a great job at throwing with anticipation. You see right here, this route is not yet open, but it's about to cut and get open. And watch how he plays this. Watch, Sanders kind of waits, he sees it open, and then he makes the throw. Hey, it's only a split second. In college, that's probably the right move. In the NFL, he might adjust and start throwing with more anticipation, but ultimately, he didn't really do that in college. He kind of waited to see it get open, and did do a very good job of once he saw it open, quickly then get the ball over there, but that's kind of what happened. I also think that heading over here, he was billed as a smart player, right? A good game manager type. Because we all know he doesn't have the biggest arm, right? So, okay, that's okay if you don't have the biggest arm, but can you be a smart player? Mac Jones went 15th overall because, even though he didn't have a huge arm, because he was smart. Tua has, kind of a similar arm, but ultimately was a smart player, and he's worked in the NFL, right? He unfortunately can't stay healthy, but, his game has worked. And for Sanders, on a play like this, it's going to be a zone coverage play, but with an extra player in coverage. So there's not going to be a lot of windows right here. You see that when he takes the snap, though, he's going to look over here. And as of right now, this is kind of how this play is designed to work, is the guy in yellow, that's who Sanders is supposed to throw to. The other route, more of a setup route to kind of clear out that middle area. But with the extra player in coverage, it's just kind of difficult to get the ball there. Sanders decides to throw it in there anyway, and honestly, it might have worked had the safety not been able to come in and make the play, but also some quarterbacks would have read the safety on that play. I think Tua would have read the safety on that play, right? So it's not to say that it was a horrible play. To me, I give credit to the defense here. I think it's more so, though, when this is your strength, and maybe the NFL doesn't consider him to be as good at his strength as people, fans did, I think that was a big hindrance towards him. Now, I want to go with a positive right here because there are definitely positives. There are, and I think this is one of them where, I feel like I have to give some pushback on. There are things he does well. One of the things I really want to give pushback on, though, is people talk about him like he's one of the Manning brothers or something. He can move enough, right? He's not Deion Sanders, but watch what happens. So when this play begins, the edge rusher towards the top of the screen kind of goes with more of an inside move. Because of that, Shedeur could decide to run, but there are a couple of Arizona defenders who are over the middle. Now, they're actually going to be in the middle of pulling off a switch, which certainly helps Shedeur. But watch as Sanders is going to be able to step forward and he gets into the end zone for a touchdown. He can move a little, right? Again, he's a fine athlete. He's nothing otherworldly, but it's not like it's a massive negative, his running or anything like that. He can move a little. It's not otherworldly. Also, heading over here, I do think part of why there might be just a massive difference in how fans view him and how the league views him is, okay, this play, didn't even need to break it down because he's flipping it underneath. Watch as, I believe this is Travis Hunter is going to make the catch and do Travis Hunter type things where he's just going to run by everybody, nearly gets into the end zone for a touchdown, and still is able to pick up a ton of yards. So yeah, good play and yes, that was Travis Hunter, number 12. Really good stuff there by him. But ultimately, maybe people feel as though that's kind of the numbers looking better than the play. A lot of flipping it to good receivers. It wasn't just Travis Hunter. They had good receivers there. So an argument can be made for that. Also, the other negative, which just was something that had been brought up, but I do wonder if the NFL just viewed this more harshly than some fans did and some draft analysts did, were watch what happens. So you're going to see that Sanders takes a snap. As of right here, there is pressure off the edge, which, okay, it is what it is. But one of the things that, I really crushed him for in my first film study, and I'm going to crush him for again, is I think one of the most underrated aspects of being a quarter is damage management. When a play is going wrong, how do you minimize that going wrong? Can Tom Brady, how often would we see him throw the ball away? On third down, sometimes he would throw the ball away because that's what you had to do. It's still the best play available at this point. Essentially, you have to view it as this is a negative play, and I can't be trying to turn it into a positive one. I have to be just, if the play is -7 in value, can I make it a -3 in value, right? Or is it going to turn into a -15 in value? We'll watch here how it's going to turn into a -15 in value as he loses about that many yards trying to stay up on his feet, whereas he could have just gone down and taken a sack right there. Again, this is one example, but there were a lot of these examples where just bad plays would become worse plays, and you just gotta be more careful than that if you're a starting quarterback in the NFL. And ultimately, teams did not love that. And also heading over here, I think that this was a big factor. I think this really was something we maybe underrated in the draft process. It's something I remember touching on in the film when I did my first film study on Sanders, but not really going too hard on it. But in hindsight, maybe I should have brought it up more, because you're going to see it's a player running a route trying to get into a gap in coverage underneath the safety, but past the players covering over the middle of the field. It is once again just a 3-man rush. So Sanders is going to take the snap. He looks in that direction, and as of right now, there's a window. I mean, this is a throw that I know that you're on the hash marks all the way on the other side of the screen, but again, if you're an NFL quarterback, you should be able to make this throw. Sanders decides to make this throw, but there's just too much air under it. Because of that, it's actually a really bad break as it gets batted up and intercepted. But it was not quick enough, right? He did not get it there in time. And for a college player, that's a pretty solid throw. But for a NFL prospect who we're viewing as a potential starter, you want to be able to make the tough throws. And that's a tough throw. It is. But he wasn't able to make it. And when you don't have the arm talent to make the tough throws, people are going to be harsher about the other stuff. And I think part of the film is just there wasn't really a lot of A's or A pluses in his game. There were B's in his game, and there were C's, and there were D's, and there were F's in parts of his game. But where was there an A or an A plus? So yeah, ultimately, what I think it kind of comes down to is and I brought this up in my original film study, is you're essentially getting a project quarterback who also isn't a great athlete. And teams don't love to do that. You're fine with project quarterbacks. Jalen Milroe went ahead of him, right? And he's considered a bit of a project, but he's just ridiculous athlete, and if he can hit his ceiling, well, he could be a star player, right? Sanders doesn't really have that because he's not that great of an athlete. As I mentioned, people have kind of overcorrected on it and act like he's, a horrible athlete. He's fine, but he just isn't a superstar, doesn't have a huge arm, isn't the best when it comes to reading defenses. He is still very good at seeing the field. That is one thing I will stand by. He sees the field very well. He throws while getting hit very well. Those are two very positive qualities, but I don't know if he has an A or an A plus anywhere else in his game. And ultimately, that is, I think, the issue is, okay, he needs this, he's going to have a big developmental jump going to the NFL. And maybe that's just a bigger jump than a lot of people realized that the NFL was going to see him as needing. And maybe doesn't have the return on investment that you would want for a risk of his factor. That being said, it still feels like his tape is better than a 5th-round pick, right? But at least it's not as... I can easily see why he wasn't considered a first-round pick, and honestly, I can kind of see why NFL teams maybe wouldn't have loved him in the second round now because of this. And then I think at that point, well, if you're not even a second-rounder, teams are going to be less likely to draft you if you're going to be a backup. They don't want, a backup with that kind of noise, right? All that stuff. That's where everything else that we've already talked to death about comes into play. But I do think that the film was the most important thing. If his film was incredible, he would have gone top 5, and it's just not. So that's why he went when he did. But yeah, those are my thoughts on all of this. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.